Welcome to Bite Size Rando. My name is DDR Kirby. Today we're going to be talking all about how to route through Ice Palace. Now this is quite a complicated dungeon to route through correctly, so this is going to be a fairly long video, but you can feel free to skip to the summary at the end if you just want the Cliff Notes version. Now I'm going to make a few assumptions as I talk about this dungeon. I am going to assume that you have the hammer, because being in here without the hammer really sucks, and usually is not worth it, unless it's really hard required. I am also going to assume that you know how to do most of the tricks in this dungeon, such as the Ice Palace bomb jump here, as well as this icebreaker rail clip with Samaria. I am also going to do all of my timing comparisons with the boots equipped, because it was a lot of work to do all the timings, and I didn't want to have to redo all of them twice. I do think that having the boots on or off doesn't really make that much of a difference in most of the rooms, so it shouldn't really matter, but I will try to call it out if it does. Now, once you get past the initial part of Ice Palace with the Pengator chest, you're always going to want to do the right-hand side of Ice Palace first. And when I say the right-hand side, I mean everything past this small key door. So that's going to be this room here with this chest, it's going to be this room here with that chest, and this room over here with this third chest. So 3 chests in total on the right side. Now, if you're doing the icebreaker clip, you're going to come out of that door, you're going to clip through this rail, and then this is pretty obvious that you're always going to do the right side first, because of course you're going to come through here, grab this chest, lift this block, and pick up this key, and of course you're going to get that chest because it's on the way, and then you're going to get this chest because it's also on the way, and then you'll have your small key to go through this door. So that is very simple to reason out with the icebreaker clip route. But what if you're doing the Ice Palace bomb jump? Why is it that we want to go to the right-hand side if we're doing the Ice Palace bomb jump and we're coming from the bottom of this room? And the answer is that the right-hand side is basically a dead end. So if you go through here, you know, you're going to go all the way through here to this chest. This is a dead end, so you have to turn back. And also, if you go up these set of stairs, this is also a dead end, right? Because that leads you to this room, and even if you kill all of these jellies, that door will not open. So this is a plain dead end, and you can't do anything from here. So, since the right-hand side is a dead end, we might as well go and do all of those checks first. Now, if you're coming from the south end of this room, you may or may not have a small key to get through this door to get to the right side. So if you got a small key from the very first chest, the Pengator chest, then obviously you can just use it here and open this door and you'll be on the right side, and that'll be all well and good. But if you don't have a small key and you've got something else, like say the map or the compass or enough different item, then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go north here instead to this room. And this is a falling tile room. You can grab a heart here if you want. And once you fall down, you're going to land up in this room. You're going to go through this door on the northeast. And then after killing these jellies here, you're going to use your hookshot to hookshot across. Or alternatively, this is not on logic, but you can use a bomb jump to bomb across here. And once you navigate through this room with the big spikes, you can go up these stairs, and then you'll end up here again, and you'll be at the right side. So that is going to take a little bit longer, but it is going to get you to the right side. And of course, no matter how you got through to the right side, you're always going to pick up this small key over here underneath this big block, so you'll always be able to return through this doorway here to get back to the plus-shaped room once you're done with the right side. Now obviously, if you come here without a small key and you have to do the tile drop down in order to get to the right side, that is going to be significantly slower than if you happen to have a small key and you can just go through this door. So some of you might be wondering, well, if I come here without a small key, maybe I can go do the left-hand side of the dungeon first. Maybe I can do the rest of the dungeon and then come back here when I do have a small key. That way I can get to the right-hand side faster. There's a couple problems with that. One problem is that you do want to end up on the left side eventually, because that is where the boss is. The second problem is that the right-hand side might have your big key, and you're going to definitely want to have that on the left side because the big chest is over there. So, because of those problems, to avoid those problems, definitely always want to do the right-hand side first. Alright, now let's actually talk about the rest of the dungeon, what I'm going to call the second half. There's 2 ways to get there. You can actually go through this door over here, or you can go through the tile drop down that I showed you earlier, and we're going to talk about both of those ways as we do our timing comparisons. In the second half, there are 3 different chests. There is Freezer chest in this room, and if you drop down or bomb through the floor, this is the big chest over here, and then finally we have Iced Tea chest, which is called that because if you kind of look sideways, this room is shaped like a T, so we call it Iced Tea. Finally, there is a small key underneath this pot. Sometimes beginners will forget this key. It can be relevant, you don't always have to get it, but sometimes you will be required to get this key. Now, getting to the boss of Ice Palace is a little bit interesting because there's two different ways to go about doing it. If you have the crystal switch pegs set up like this, as it would be if you did the Ice Palace bomb jump, then you actually don't need the big key at all to get to Cold Stare. You can just push this block over here, you never have to go through the big key door, and you can use this block that you just pushed to depress this switch, and then you can make your way onto the boss. Now, alternatively, if you have the crystal switches set the other way, then you're going to have to use the big key on this door here, and then you're going to have to use one small key here. You'll eventually end up in the same room, but this time you won't have that block from above, so you're going to have to use the Cane of Somaria to depress this switch in order to advance. And this can be logically required if Cold Stare has a small key, so keep that in mind. And one last note about the big key. The big key is always logically required to access the boss, and it can be anywhere except it can't be on the boss itself, and it can't be inside the big chest locking itself, but it can be in any of the other normal chests in the dungeon. Alright, now we're going to start looking at some timing comparisons to figure out the fastest way between point A and point B. For example, I think it's pretty clear and obvious that the fastest way from this plus-shaped room here to the freezer chest room is to just go left here and then take these stairs. And of course you can do a stair clip here, or you can use the hammer, then you can get this chest. What's less obvious is a question like, what's the fastest way to get from this freezer chest here to the iced tea chest over here? So what do you think is the fastest way? Let's look at some timing comparisons and we'll figure that out. Okay, so we have three different routes to compare here. In these top two routes, we're going to drop down in the hole here, but in this bottom route, we are going to bomb jump over instead, so we can go through this doorway. And each of these routes is going to have different requirements. So you can see that in this bottom route here, you're actually going to go through this key door here, which means you need a small key on hand in order to do this route. And the difference between these top two routes is that the crystal switch is oriented differently. So if the yellow pegs are down, then that makes it really easy to just walk across this room to get to the other side. But if the yellow pegs are up, then instead you have to push this block and fall down, and then you'll have to go through these stairs and do a lot of transitions to get to the same place. So it's going to be a lot longer. So you can see that this bottom route makes it to iced tea ahead of the other ones, so about, looks like 4 seconds faster-ish. So that bomb jump is going to get you to iced tea faster. And you can see that if the yellow pegs are not down, so if the blue pegs are down instead, then of course, if you don't take this bomb jump route and you don't have a small key, for example, getting to the iced tea chest is going to take pretty much forever. It's going to take an extra, 20 seconds compared to if the crystal switch was in the other orientation. Now we're going to look at how to get from this plus-shaped lobby room here to the iced tea chest. So there's two different ways we can do this. You can either go left through this door here and route through freezer chest room, or you can go north and instead go through this falling tile room. So if we go left to freezer chest room, then we already know the fastest way from freezer chest room to iced tea is going to be to do this bomb jump across this pit, assuming you have a small key. So we're just going to compare against that one. It turns out if you do the fallen tile room and instead just dash all the way downward through this hallway, you're going to save a few seconds, about 3 seconds it looks like. Now you might think that this is an example of a room where having the boots is actually going to speed you up significantly since you're doing this long vertical dash through this room, but I tested it and it doesn't actually matter that much because your speed when you're dashing through the ice is a little bit different, so when you don't have the boots you only lose about half a second when you execute this room properly, so it doesn't actually make as much of a difference as you might expect. Alright, now we're going to look at how to get from iced tea chest to the big chest. So it's kind of two different directions you can go here. You can either go up through these stairs or you can go right through the door here. I will note that some of these ice rooms can be quite tricky to execute quickly, so feel free to reference these videos for some ideas of how to get through them a little bit faster. And you can see this route on the left here does end up winning out by a few seconds, right? Now the thing about this left route though is that this route only works if you have the yellow pegs down, because you need to dash through this room. So again, we notice a recurring theme that if the yellow pegs are down, then iced tea is much easier and faster to get to and from. But if yellow pegs are up, then it blocks your way, and if the yellow pegs are up, you're going to have to take this route instead, where you do this drop down and hookshot clip. Now, if you don't have the hookshot, then obviously you can't do this clip, and in that case, when you get here and you go through this door, instead of falling down the hole, you're going to have to bomb jumps. You're going to have to bomb yourself over with a bomb jump, and then you're going to have to bomb the left side of this room to fall down. So that's going to cost you another couple of seconds. But if you don't have the hookshot and you have the yellow pegs up, that's going to be your only choice. Some of you might have already realized this, but by looking at the same two videos, we can of course deduce what's the fastest way from the iced tea chest to get to the boss. And of course it's going to be the same route, this one on the left that we looked at earlier, because that is going to get to this room with the big key door much earlier than this other route where you do this drop down through this hole. Now of course that is assuming that it is okay for you to enter through the right side of this room, and that you don't need to, for example, enter from the left side of this room because the blue pegs are down and you still need to push this left-hand block. Now the last one we're going to look at is how to get from the freezer chest to the big chest, which might seem kind of silly because of course it's just one screen away, right? You just have to fall down. But what we're going to be comparing is whether it's better to fall down through this hole and then hookshot clip to the left, or whether it's better to throw a bomb on the left and then land on the left side directly. So in these top two, we're going to hookshot clip, and the bottom one, we're going to be using the bomb. And you can see that all three of these finished extremely close, within 1 second. So it's really not that much of a difference, but I did want to show you that if you have the boots to dash out of this room, then doing the hookshot clip is going to be the fastest. But if you do not have the boots, and you have to walk out of this room instead, it's actually going to be slower than laying the bomb. Now, of course, this does assume that you throw the bomb optimally, which is a little bit tricky to do because after using the fire rod on, or bombos, if you don't have the fire rod, after killing the two freezors, you have to throw the bomb before opening the chests. That'll make it so that the bomb explodes a little bit faster and gets you through this room quicker. Now, if you want to not have to deal with that execution, then you're fine to just hookshot clip every time, even if you don't have the boots, because it's literally only 0.3 seconds faster, so it really isn't that much of a difference, but I did just want to illustrate this if you're looking for the optimal thing to do. Okay, so we already talked in some of those videos about how having these orange pegs down is going to make it a lot faster to get to and from iced tea, because we can open up this path. But when should you have the blue pegs down? When should you have the crystal switch set on blue instead? Well, first case is if you do not have the Cane of Somaria and you're doing this Ice Palace bomb jump route, then you always want the switch to be set on blue. So you're going to have these orange pegs up, and then you're going to bomb jump across this little corner here. And why is that? Well, it's because if you don't have the Cane of Somaria, the only way to get to the boss is by pushing this block through this pit here and using it to depress the switch, because obviously you don't have the Cane of Somaria, so this is the only way you can do this. And even though having the orange pegs open does let you collect the rest of the item checks a little bit faster, once it comes time to get to the boss, you're going to have to go through here, and it's a lot more transitions. And then finally, when you go down here, you're going to have to open this key door and hit this crystal switch. You're going to have to backtrack all the way to here, and then you're going to end up in this state. And now, you can't use these right two blocks to get to Cold Stair. It has to be the ones on the left, and you're on the wrong side. So what you have to do is you have to go right here, and you're going to have to make a loop across the entire left half of the dungeon again. And eventually, you'll finally end up here, and you'll be able to push this block. And that is really, really slow, so you never want to do this. And the worst part about it is, if you don't route carefully, Cold Stair might have a small key, which means it might be logically locked by Somaria. If you're not careful, you could actually not even have a small key to open this door. So you might actually, in the worst case, end up here, not have Somaria, not be able to have this block because you can't get to that crystal switch, and then you're just going to have to exit the dungeon and come back again. So no one wants that. So if you don't have the Cane of Somaria, you definitely want the blue pegs to be down. Now, if you do have the Cane of Somaria, then things get a little bit interesting. You could, of course, have the blue pegs down and push the block to get to Cold Stair like you did before, or you could have the crystal switch on orange. This time you're going to go through the big key door, and then when you make it all the way to this room, you're just going to use your Cane of Somaria to hit the switch, and you're never going to have to worry about this crystal switch through this door. So both ways will work. Now, of course, between the two of these, it's obviously faster to push this block and do the drop down because that's just one screen transition as opposed to the multiple transitions that you're going to have to do when you go take this route. But we also talked about how having the orange pegs down here allows us to get to and from iced tea a lot faster, so it makes some of the routing more efficient. So in which situations is it better to have the switch on blue, and which is it better to have the switch on orange? Let's first talk about the situation where you are in go mode. So you don't need to check any of the chests, all you're worried about is getting straight to the boss. Well, from here, it seems pretty obvious that you'd want the switch to be on blue because, as we just talked about, doing this drop down is faster. But you have to remember that in order to have the switch on blue, that means you actually have to spend some time earlier in this dungeon to go up here and hit this switch to get it on blue before returning and doing your icebreaker clip. So is it worth it to invest this initial time hitting that switch so that you can make this part of the dungeon later faster to get to Cold Stare? Let's look at the timing comparisons and find out. Alright, the first thing we're going to take a look at is how much time does it take to hit the crystal switch at the beginning of the dungeon. So on the right here, we're just going to go straight through this room, we're going to do our icebreaker clip right away. And on the left, we're going to instead backtrack to this crystal switch, hit it, and then go all the way back to the room that we were before finally doing the icebreaker clip. And you'll see that this actually does take a considerable amount of time. So it's going to take, looks like, just under 20 seconds. You can say about 18 and a half seconds to hit the crystal switch in the beginning of the dungeon. Let's see if that 18 and a half second investment actually pays off in the last part of the dungeon. So I want you to focus on just these top two videos for now. So in the left video, we're going to have the switch, we're going to have hit the crystal switch, so it's going to be on blue, so we're going to have paid that initial investment. On the right hand, instead, we're going to have to go through this longer route. Let's see what the timing difference is. And if I speed this up, you'll see that the time difference is about around 8 seconds only. So using that 18.5 seconds to save around 8 seconds doesn't actually seem that great. The problem with this video comparison is that this route isn't actually possible. And that is because in order to do this route, you actually need the big key to get through this door, and you need a small key to get through this door here. And obviously, if you're go-moding the dungeon, you're not going to be opening all the chests along the way, because that, obviously costs you extra time. So this isn't actually a good comparison. In fact, if we assume that you just walk into the dungeon and you already have the big key, let's just magically give you a big key at the start. You can use this route here, and you can go into this room, which has a guaranteed small key underneath this pot, but you have to hit this switch to get back. So this is going to be, the easiest guaranteed way to farm a small key for this route. And if you spend that extra time getting the small key, then you'll see that this route actually is quite a bit slower, and it ends up being about 20 seconds slower than the route where you hit this crystal switch. So even if you start the dungeon with a big key in hand, it's not worth it to do this. So you want to hit the crystal switch, even if you magically had a big key on hand, right? So for this reason, whenever you're in go mode, you want the crystal switch to be on blue. Now, I will add a side note that if you are playing Key Sanity, things change a little bit because you might actually already have the big key and maybe even a small key as you enter this dungeon. So if you're in go mode and you're playing Key Sanity, and you already have a big key and a small key, then it turns out that hitting the crystal switch is going to be slower. In this case, all you want to do is not hit the crystal switch, because that takes 18 and a half seconds. Instead, you want to use your keys that you already have to go through and take this route, and it is going to end up being faster overall. Now, if you're not in go mode, then you're going to want to have these orange pegs down. And this applies even if you are like one item away from go mode, unless maybe Ice Palace is literally the last dungeon and the last place you're looking for, and maybe you can make a judgment call in that case. I don't have an easy side-by-side video comparison, unfortunately, that I can use to demonstrate why you want to have these orange pegs down, but hopefully everything we've talked about so far should make it clear. First of all, we talked about how it makes the routing between chests a lot faster and easier because it makes getting to and from Iced Tea a lot quicker. We also talked about how putting the switch on blue costs a whole 18.5 seconds, whereas having to do the route through this north door doesn't cost nearly that much time. Now, there are going to be cases where you, depending on the item layout, you might get all three of the items in this dungeon early, and maybe the big key is an Iced Tea chest. In those rare scenarios, you are going to wish that the switch was on blue, because then when you come here, you could just drop down here, and that's going to be a lot faster. Whereas when the switch is on orange, you're instead going to have to go to Iced Tea to get your big key, because you're going to need the big key to get to the boss. But in general, you're not going to be able to know the chest layout beforehand, so in general, it is going to be better to have these orange pegs down. And of course, if you are playing Key Sanity, then you are going to have a few more complicated cases to think about, such as if you come in here and you want to clear the dungeon, but you don't have the big key, then of course you're going to want the switch to be on blue because you don't have the big key to go through this door. So the only way to get to the boss is going to be by having your switch on blue. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about magic management, because as we all know, the boss of Ice Palace is Cold Stare, and if you're going to use a Fire Rod, it takes 8 shots from the Fire Rod to melt Cold Stare's outer shell, and that is a full magic bar, so there's no magic left over. Now, if you're taking the Ice Palace bomb jump route through Ice Palace, then there are some extra magic refills that you can pick up along the way. In this room, there's 2 small magics underneath these 2 pots, and in this room, there is also a small magic underneath this pot at the bottom of the screen. But if you're doing the Icebreaker clip route and clipping through this rail, like so, which you should always do if you have the Cane of Samaria, then you're actually going to skip those rooms, so you won't be able to pick up those 3 small magics. Now, if you're in Go mode, then this isn't actually a problem at all, because if you're in Go mode, you're going to spend 1 Fire Rod shot on that Freezor, and then you're going to spend 1 Cane of Samaria usage to actually do the Icebreaker clip here. And that means you can just go to the end of the dungeon and pick up the 2 small magics beneath these 2 pots, and that will be enough to get you back to full magic again. But if you are not in Go mode, then you're going to have to spend an extra 2 Fire Rod shots in this room to kill these 2 Freezors to get Freezor chests to appear, and then you're also going to have to use the Cane of Samaria another time here, because remember we said that if you're not in Go mode, we want to have the crystal switch on orange, so we're not going to be able to push the block from above. So that means, in total, we're using 3 Fire Rod shots and 2 Samaria usages, which means we need 4 small magics total if you want to refill our magic back up to full. Now, of course, 2 of those can just come from the end of the dungeon here, underneath these 2 pots, but that still leaves us with 2 small magics worth of magic that we need to find somewhere else in the dungeon, ideally. Now, there is 1 small magic pot underneath this skull here in the long ice hallway, but that doesn't really help us that much because, as I said, we need 2 small magics, not just 1, so this isn't enough. Another idea is if you go north in this plus-shaped room, this falling tile room actually has 2 small magic pickups underneath these top 2 pots. And at first glance, this might seem perfect because I said we need 4 magic refills total. There's 2 here and then 2 at the end of the dungeon. The problem with this is that when you come into this plus-shaped room, you haven't done Freezor chest yet, which means when you come in here, the only magic you've spent is 1 Fire Rod shot at the very beginning of the dungeon, and you've also spent 1 Samaria block usage to do the Icebreaker clip, which means in total you've only spent 1.5 magic pots worth. That means that collecting 2 magic pots is going to be a little bit of a wasted magic because of course you can't store extra magic past maximum. So these 2 actually aren't going to be enough because you haven't done Freezor chests yet when you enter this room, and it really doesn't make sense to do Freezor chests first and then come to this room afterward. That is just really terrible routing. So this actually doesn't work. And that leaves the only other option, which is if you have a small key, you can use it on this door to get to this crystal switch room, which we have seen before. You have to hit the switch, watch out for that bunny beam there, you definitely don't want to run into that, but if you lift these 3 pots at the bottom, there are 3 small magics, and this is at the end of the dungeon, so this is going to be enough if you pick up 2 or 3 of these. Of course, this does take some extra time, and of course you're going to need to make sure that you have a small key to open this door, so that is going to affect the routing a little bit. Now, for these reasons, if you're doing the Icebreaker route and you have the Cane of Samaria and you're not in Go mode, I would recommend doing your best to try and come in here to Ice Palace with some sort of magic backup to beat Cold Stare, whether that be Bombos, Half Magic, Green Potion, or any number of other things which I will explain in detail later on in this video. And of course, if you don't have any of those things, there will be some different optimal routes, and I will try to cover both situations. But if at all possible, you do definitely want to avoid having to go into this room for those extra magics, because that does take time, and needing to have this extra key can affect things a little bit. Okay, finally, the moment everyone has been waiting for, we're actually going to start comparing some routes. We're going to start with the Icebreaker case first, so you're going to have the Cane of Samaria, you're not going to be in Go mode, Crystal Switch is going to be on orange, and we're also going to assume for now that you have some sort of magic backup for Cold Stare, so you don't need any extra magic at the end of the dungeon. This is probably going to be the most common case to run into, since people do like to have the Cane of Samaria on hand when they come to this dungeon, because it does make routing it so much faster. Let's ignore this bottom right comparison for now. I'll get back to that one later. And for now, let's focus on these other three. So I'm going to say A, B, and C. So in Route C here, we're going to go up from the plus shape room into this falling tile room, and our strategy here is going to be to go to Iced Tea first. In routes A and B, we're instead going to go to the freezer chest first. In Route A, we're then going to go directly to the big chest before going to Iced Tea, whereas in Route B, we're going to do the same thing but other order. We're going to go to Iced Tea first by doing a bomb jump, and then we're going to get to the big chest. Now, of course, we have these orange pegs down, which will let us traverse that room faster, and otherwise things would be a lot slower. I'm going to speed these videos up because they are quite long. I will note that because Ice Palace is a complicated dungeon, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to just choose one of these routes and use it every single time. It's going to depend on the actual key layout and where the items are, which of these routes will be applicable, so you won't always be able to do the fastest thing every time. So I will be getting to that in just a minute, but for now we can see that Route A is going to win out. So it's going to win out with a time of around 1:16, followed by Route B, which is going to be second place, and then Route C is going to be the slowest at around 1:22. Right, so just to recap, Route A, the fastest one, was the one where we went over to Freezer Chest first, and then after Freezer Chest we directly did the big chest next, and then we did Iced Tea last. Second place was Route B, where we did Freezer Chest and then Iced Tea next, and then Big Chest last. And the slowest one was the one where we tried to do the tile drop down and did Iced Tea first, so that one is going to be the slowest of these three. Now, these video comparisons are assuming that we're going to open every single chest in the dungeon, right? So we're full clearing it. But as you know, sometimes we don't actually have to open every chest in the dungeon. We might get all three of the items in Ice Palace early, and then we get to skip one or two chests. Something that's really nice about this top left route, the one that's fastest, Route A, is that this is the route that checks Iced Tea chests last. And of course, Iced Tea is the chest that takes the longest to get to. It's the slowest check out of all of them. So because it checks Iced Tea last, then when you run into a fortunate scenario where you get to skip Iced Tea, this is going to feel really fast because you're already here and you already have all the items, and you only took 25 seconds, right? Sometimes you might need a small key from this next room, but whatever. It's still going to be really fast compared to the other routes that deal with Iced Tea because they didn't check it last. So that is something that's nice about this route. Okay, so obviously we want to do this top left route, Route A, if we can, because it is the fastest in the worst case, and it's also even faster if we get lucky and get to skip Iced Tea. Now, remember, this is the route where we go to Freezer Chest first, and then we do the big chest second. But that only works if you have the big key. So if you open Freezer Chest and you still don't have the big key, then you cannot take this route. Then you're going to have to choose one of the other routes. And we said that this one, Route B, was the second place, so we're going to do that one instead. So if you don't have the big key here, which is actually going to be fairly rare, because if you don't have the big key, it means the big key has to be specifically in Iced Tea chest. So I think that's like a 1 out of 6 chance. But if you don't have the big key, then you're going to bomb jump across instead, and then you're going to go to Iced Tea next, which is going to mean you're going to go through this door. Now, you are going to have a small key to go through this door to get to Iced Tea. And you might be wondering, well, what if I open Freezer Chest and I don't have a big key and I also don't have a small key? Then what do? I can't use either of these two routes. Well, if you think about it, Freezer Chest is the 5th chest that you open in the dungeon, right? There's Pen Gator chests, 3 chests on the right side, and then Freezer Chests for 5 chests. So the only way that you can open Freezer Chests and not have a big key and also not have the small keys is if you already have gotten the map and the compass and all 3 dungeon items, right? So that means you're not looking for any more items. It also means that the big key has to be at Iced Tea chest, and it also means that Cold Stare and the big chest both have small keys. Now, in this scenario, you just want to go to Cold Stare to finish. But remember, in order to get to Cold Stare, because the orange pegs are down, you are going to need to get the big key, which is an Iced Tea, and you're also going to need to get a small key. Now, the best way to do this is you're going to drop down. You're not going to bomb jump because, of course, the bomb jump route requires you to have a small key. So after you drop down, you're going to go here, and then you're going to dash over to this room, And in this room, be sure that you pick up this small key underneath this pot. I do like to do it on the way here. You can also do it on the way back, but I find that it's generally better to do it on the way going this way because you usually have to wait for the fire bar in that room anyways. So now you're gonna go to Iced Tea. Iced Tea is gonna have your big key, and with the big key in hand and the small key that you got from that pot, you're gonna backtrack through these rooms over here, and then you're gonna go to the boss and finish. Now there is one more restriction that I haven't yet mentioned for these routes, and that is that Plan B. This is the backup plan for if we couldn't do Plan A because we didn't have the big key. So in Plan B, this actually requires you to have the hookshot, because getting from Iced Tea to Big Chest this way, you are going to have to hookshot clip in order to open the big chest, because you're going to enter this room from here, and you're going to have to use the hookshot. And obviously, you can't do that if you don't have the hookshot. So if you come into Ice Palace without the hookshot, Plan B, Route B, is not going to be possible. And that is where this bottom right corner, Route D, comes in. So if you don't have the hookshot, then what you're going to do is after this, you're going to start the same way. You're going to open freezer chest first and then bomb jump over. But instead of falling back to Plan B, you're going to fall back to Plan D instead. So in this one, instead of exiting to the right, you're going to go up these stairs, and then you're going to go all the way around here. And this is going to take longer. And you're going to hit the switch so that this door opens, and then here in the freezer chest room, you're going to have to bomb jump across and then throw another bomb so that you can finally get to the big chest by falling down from above. Now, if I fast forward through here, you're going to see that this is going to be the slowest of all of these 4 routes. So it's going to take some extra seconds because you had to take a more inefficient route and you had to wait for those bomb jumps. So this is going to be slower. But since you don't have the hookshot, that's your only choice. You're going to have to fall back from Plan A to Plan D. Now, you might be wondering, well, since Route D, is going to be the slowest of them all, when I don't have the hookshot, maybe it's not as good to try and go for Plan A but then have to fall back down to Plan D, which is the slowest one overall. Maybe it's better to go for Route C, which is the more consistent one. It's kind of a middling time, right? So which of these 2 strategies is going to be more worth it on average? Well, if you think about it, it depends on the big key. So obviously, if you get into this plus-shaped room and you already have the big key, then obviously you should just do Plan A because that is just the fastest overall. But what if you don't have the big key yet? Well, if you don't have the big key yet, then there's only 2 places that the big key can be in. It can be in Freezer Chest, or it can be in Iced Tea Chest. So if you think about it, when we open this chest, there will be a 50% chance for it to be the big key, and 50% chance that it won't be the big key. So we'll have a 50% chance of getting to do Plan A, and 50% chance of getting to do Plan D instead. And if you look at the numbers, that means that we have a 50% chance of saving about, like 7 seconds here, versus a 50% chance of losing only 5 seconds here. So on average, routes A and D combined are going to save you time overall, even though sometimes you'll be unlucky and get the slowest path. So, in conclusion, if you are ever in this state, even if you don't have the hookshot, you definitely always want to go left and go to freezer chest first. Do not go up, do not enter this falling tile room if you are in this situation. So just always go do freezer chest first, and then based on your keys and whether you have the hookshot, you'll either do A, B, or D. Okay, so now let's talk about the situation where you are still doing the icebreaker route, so you did not hit the crystal switch, but this time you don't have any magic backups for Cold Stare, so you're going to need to go into this room by spending a small key and pick up the small magic refills underneath these 3 pots at the bottom. And of course, that means that when you get to the end of the dungeon here, you're going to need to make sure you have a small key to open the store. Now, there are 4 total small keys in Ice Palace. One is underneath this block here on the right side. There is one underneath this pot here in this room. And then the other 2 can be anywhere else in the dungeon. There are 4 total small key doors to open in the dungeon. One of them is here, kind of the connector between the right-hand side of Ice Palace as well and the rest of the dungeon. There is one here at the bottom of this long ice room. There is one here, kind of on the way to the Cold Stare area, and of course there is the last one here, which is leading to our magic refills. Now, the tricky thing about this situation is that Cold Stare can potentially have one of our 4 small keys. And if Cold Stare has a small key, then that means we only have 3 small keys to work with for the rest of the dungeon. And we think about these doors. We're always going to have to open this door, because this is the only way to get from the right side of the dungeon to the rest of the dungeon and to Cold Stare. So we're always going to have to open that door. We're also always going to have to open this door, because since the crystal switch is on orange, this is the only way that we can get to Cold Stare. And of course, since we need magic, we're also going to have to open this door, because that is the whole point. We need to get our magic refills here. Which leaves this 4th small key door. So this means that if Cold Stare has a small key, we cannot open this door. We can't use this doorway. Because if we do, if we spend a small key here, and Cold Stare has a small key, then we'll be 1 small key short, and we won't be able to get in here, and we won't be able to get our magic refills, and we're going to have a bad time. Now, if we look back at our 4 routes, these are the same 4 videos from before. A nice thing about Route A, this fastest route, is that Route A, if you remember from before, doesn't actually ever touch the door at the bottom of this long ice hallway. So we can still use Route A just like before. Nothing is really going to change. So that means if you open, you're going to go left, you're going to open freezer chest, and if you have a big key, you're going to fall down and open the big chest right away. After you open the big chest, then you're going to continue onward to Iced Tea if you need to, and whenever you're ready to go to Cold Stare, right, it could be like right now, you're just going to need to make sure that you have 2 small keys on hand before going up through this big key door. Now that can mean that you have to, for example, get the small key underneath this pot over here. It could even mean that you potentially have to go all the way over to Iced Tea chest just to open this chest for a small key. That can happen sometimes. But whatever the case is, eventually you'll end up back in this room with 2 small keys, and you'll be able to get the extra magic before Cold Stare and go to the boss, and you'll be done. Now, what about our fallback plans? What about routes B and D? These were the routes that we had to use if we did not have the big key after opening freezer chest. Well, remember before we said we could only use these routes if we had a small key on hand, because we'd need the small key to open this door at the bottom here. But of course, if Cold Stare can potentially have a small key, then we can't touch this door. We can't go through this doorway. So, what this really means is that this route is only valid for us if we have 2 small keys on hand instead. Because if we have 2 small keys, that means we have found both of the small keys that have been randomized through the dungeon, and that means that Cold Stare can't have a small key. Okay, so if you have 2 small keys, then Cold Stare can't have a small key here. Then that means we are free to open this door because we are guaranteed to have enough keys on hand at the end of the dungeon to be able to open that door that leads to the magic, because Cold Stare is not going to have one of our keys. Now, when you're doing this, you are going to want to make sure to pick up this key underneath this pot. You are going to need it if you're taking this route. But other than that, this is going to work fine. So again, just the only thing that changes is the requirement for taking Route B or Route D, depending on whether you have the hookshot or not, just increases so that you need 2 small keys instead of 1 small key to take this path. So we know what to do if we have the big key. Obviously, just check the big chest. And if we have 2 small keys, then we can jump over it because we don't have to worry about Cold Stare having a key. But if neither of those is true, then we have only 0 or 1 small keys. Then the only thing you could do is you can drop down into this hole. You can't open the big chest because the big key is going to be at Iced Tea chest. So you're going to get to Iced Tea by going around this way. You're going to want to pick up this small key from this pot here, and then eventually you'll make it all the way over to Iced Tea, where you're going to get your big key. Once you get your big key, you're just going to go back straight the way you came, through that ice room again, and then eventually you'll end up here again, where you can dash left and hookshot clip to open the big chest, assuming you still need to. And finally, you'll make your way to the boss, and you'll have an extra small key on hand to open this door and go get your magic before Cold Stare. You might already be seeing a problem with this, which is, what happens if you don't have the hookshot to do this clip? And this is where it starts to get kind of messy. You see, the thing is, if your big key is in Iced Tea chest, there is no way to get from Iced Tea chest back to the big chest without either doing this hookshot clip that I just showed, or using a small key on the door that we don't want to use it in, right? Because the only other way to get out of here is to use a small key on this door, which is the door that we don't want to open if we know that Cold Stare might have a small key. So, what are we supposed to do in this case? Are we just screwed? Now, thankfully, this situation is actually relatively rare because the big key has to be specifically in Iced Tea Chest, and you have to come here and have 0 or 1 small keys. So I think by my count that probability is only around 10%, although don't quote me exactly on that. But if you happen to be coming into Ice Palace and you don't have the hookshot and you do have the Cane of Somaria, my recommendation is just get a magic backup of some sort, just grab a potion or something so you don't have to deal with this. But if you do find yourself in the situation where you don't have the big key after opening this chest and you also don't have 2 small keys, here's what you're going to do. We are going to give up on the idea of opening this door for the magic refills here, okay? We're not going to open this door, we're not going to guarantee to have a small key, so give up on this door. We're never going to open this door. Instead, what we're going to do is after opening this chest, we're going to say, crap, I don't have a big key, I don't have 2 small keys, and then we're going to go back the way we came, and this is going to feel really weird. Now we're going to dash out this door, and you're going to go north in this plus-shaped room. And in this room, you're going to collect the 2 small magic pots underneath these 2 skulls. And remember, we said that these 2 small pots weren't super useful before, but that was only because we routed to this room before spending our 2 fire rod shots on the Freezors here. But if we spend our fire rod shots first, and then backtrack all the way over here, then these 2 small magic pots are going to be enough to deal with Cold Stare, and that will supplant our need to open this door here. So, once you've grabbed your 2 small magics from these pots, you can go ahead and drop down here into this long ice room. You'll dash all the way down, make your way here, and we will go and grab our big key from Iced Tea Chest. So this is going to be the big key. Once you have that, you're going to go back the way you came, back to this long ice hallway. You're going to hit this switch, and then you'll make it into this door. And you're still not done yet. You have to bomb jump across now. And you're probably going to have to deal with these angry Freezors because they'll probably have respawned. Now you're going to lay the bomb here. And then you're finally going to drop down and finally collect whatever is in the big chest. And be sure to lay some bombs on your way out as a sign of frustration because you probably got trolled by this seat. Alright, now we're going to switch over to talking about the Ice Palace bomb jump route. So you don't have the Cane of Somaria this time. Crystal Switch is going to be on blue, and we also don't have to worry about any magic shenanigans. So I'm going to have 4 routes for you again, A, B, C, and D, and these routes are going to look very familiar because we're actually going to compare the same strategies as before. So for example, Route C is again going to drop through the tile room, Route A, just like before, is going to do freezer chests and then the big chest directly after, and so on and so forth for routes B and D. Now the only difference here is that, again, the crystal switch is going to be set on blue instead of orange. So for example, in Route A, instead of being able to just walk across here, we're going to have to fall down here and then climb our way back up the stairs, which is going to add a lot more time. Similarly, in routes B and D, normally we'd go to the right here and then use a hookshot clip to get to the big chest, but that is actually not possible with this crystal switch orientation. So instead, we're always going to have to go up these stairs here, and then when we get to the long vertical ice room, we're going to hit the switch, and then if you have the hookshot, you can just fall in this hole and then do hookshot clip. Otherwise, you're going to have to bomb jump over and then bomb through the floor in order to get the big chest, which is going to cost you a couple of extra seconds. One interesting thing about this route is if you take Route A, you are going to have this left block already pushed in from the first time, and then you're going to push another block in from the right side because that's the fastest way to drop down here. And then you're going to have to do this kind of interesting sort of maneuver where you lift the pot and then push the block there, so that's a little bit interesting. But anyways, you can see from this comparison that the timings are much different. So this time it looks like Route B is going to win overall with 1:14.25. So this is the route again where we do freezer chest first and then immediately bomb jump over to Iced Tea and then finish up with the big chests. So Route B is going to be the fastest, followed very closely by Route C. This is the route where we went to Iced Tea first, so that's going to be almost the same amount of time. And then Route D is going to be after that, and Route A is going to be the slowest out of them all, which makes sense because Route A was slowed down the most trying to get to Iced Tea through that long and arduous path. So what can we learn from these timing comparisons? Well, obviously Route B is going to be the fastest one, so if you have the hookshot, you're going to want to prefer this one if at all possible. Not only is it marginally faster than Route C, but it also gives you one extra chance by opening freezer chest to get the required small key that you're going to need to open this key door in order to make both of these routes possible. Whereas this one, you're going to have that key on hand even before opening freezer chest. Now, if you don't have the hookshot, we said that Route D is actually slower than Route C. So if you don't have the hookshot and you do already have a small key on hand as you're in this room, you're going to want to go up first and then drop down through the falling tile room and then go to Iced Tea first. Now, of course, this is assuming that you are full clearing and opening every chest in the dungeon. Now, if you go to west to freezer chest room and you don't end up getting a small key here and you have the big key, then you're going to have to do Route A, even though it is pretty slow, because that's your only choice. So you're going to fall down and either hookshot clip or bomb through to the big chests. And the last case is if you end up in the freezer chest room and you've opened freezer chest and you have neither the big key nor the small key, then that is actually great, because that means you have all 3 required dungeon items. And because the crystal switch is on blue, that's great, because that means you don't have to worry about getting a big key and a small key to go to Cold Stare. You can just directly push this block, and then you can go straight to Cold Stare, and it'll be really fast. So that's actually a great situation to be in. Now, we just saw that Route A is going to be the slowest if you are full clearing the dungeon and opening every single chest. But that doesn't actually tell the whole story, because remember, part of the advantage behind doing Route A is that Route A checks Iced Tea chest last, and Iced Tea chest is the slowest to get to, especially when the pegs are on blue. So, I have another set of comparisons here, and it's going to be the same routes, but this time, so it's going to be Route A, Route B, Route C, just like before. Route D is going to be the same as Route B, so it doesn't matter. But this time, we're going to assume that you're going to get lucky and be able to skip the last chest in your respective route. So in Route A, we're going to be able to skip Iced Tea chest, and in Route B and C, we're going to be able to skip the big chest instead. Now, of course, Route A is going to finish a lot faster this time, because skipping Iced Tea is a huge boon for Route A, because we don't have to go through that really long and arduous route to go to Iced Tea. But in routes B and C, skipping the big chest is actually not that big of a deal, because, you have to fall down here anyway, so it just saves you a hookshot clip through to the big chest, which is really not that big of a deal. It only saves you, a little bit of time. So you can see that Route A is going to finish way ahead of the other routes. It's going to be 33 seconds, which is very fast compared to, a minute and 9 seconds. So now the question becomes, should you take routes, B and C, which have a slightly faster time in the worst case, or should you take Route A, which, as we saw, has a much faster time in the lucky case? And of course, the answer to that depends on how often you are going to be able to skip Iced Tea chest. So let's think about some probabilities. Now, if we're comparing Route A to Route B, remember that both of these routes go to freezer chest first. And the only difference is, do we go and drop down to the big chest next, or do we go and bomb over to Iced Tea next? And in order for this decision between Route A and Route B to be relevant in the seed that we're playing, we have to be able to do both Route A and Route B. And that means we have to have the big key after opening the freezer chest, and we also have to have at least one small key after freezer chest, because we need the big key to do Route A and we need a small key to do Route B. If only one of these is true, then you obviously can only do whichever route, and you'll just have to stick with that because that's the only thing you could do. And we already talked about how if neither of those are true, then that means you have all the 3 items, and then you're ready to go to Cold Stare. So let's remind ourselves of the assumptions that we're talking about. Let's just write them down. So I just said this: we need to assume that we have the big key, and we also need to assume that we have at least one small key. Now, in order for this decision to make sense, we also have to have only one and exactly one item left to find in the dungeon. Now, why is that? Well, if you think about it, if we have no items left to find in the dungeon, then we don't do Route A or Route B, we just go straight to the boss. We go to Cold Stare, and that's super easy, so we don't have to make a decision there. And if we have 2 or more items left to find, then that means no matter what, we're going to have to check all of the dungeons in the chests, assuming we're not going to take any gambles and skip anything, of course, right? Because if we have 2 items left, for example, then if we open the big chest, then there's still going to be 1 item remaining to find, and we're not going to be able to tell whether that is on Iced Tea or Cold Stare. So if there are 2 or more items left to find, then we have to check every single chest. And if we have to check every single chest, then we already know from our previous timing comparisons which route is faster in the worst case when we have to open all the chests, and that is the route when you bomb jump across. So if there's more than 1 item left that you need to find, you're always going to bomb jump across, assuming you have a small key, and then you're going to do route B. So going back to these assumptions once more, just so we can have them. So we're going to have at least, we will going to have exactly 1 item remaining. This does come up slightly over 50% of the time. I have also put the percentage chances of the other cases happening. If you're wondering how I arrived at these probabilities, based on everything that I saw in the stats as well as the logic, the item distribution is even in Ice Palace, which means no chest or check is more likely to have an item than another check. It is true that Cold Stare and the big chest can't have the big key in them, but it looks like small keys appear more frequently in those 2 locations. So as far as items are concerned, they're just even distribution. So there's 56 ways to distribute 3 items among 8 checks, and 30 of those ways end you up with only 1 item, exactly 1 item remaining after opening the freezer chest in this situation. Alright, so here are the timings for Route A from those videos that we saw earlier. It's 86 seconds in the worst case, and 33.25 seconds in the kind of luckier case where we get to go straight to Cold Stare from the big chest and skip Iced Tea. Now in terms of the probabilities, remember we have 1 item remaining in the remaining 3 checks. So that's big chest, Iced Tea, and Cold Stare. So that 1 item is equally likely to show up in any of these 3. Now, if it is in the big chest specifically, then that means we get to skip Iced Tea, and that happens 33% of the time. The other 66% of the time, we're going to need to check both the chests. So if we average out the expected time for this route, it is going to be 68.361 seconds. Now, are the timings for Route B. And same deal with the probabilities. I couldn't find any variance in the item distribution between the chests, so it's going to be exactly the same as before. And if you work out the average time, it is 72.278 seconds. So that is 4 seconds slower on average, which means if you have the choice between Route A and Route B, you want to go with Route A, assuming that you meet these conditions. Remember, if you open the freezer chest and you have the big key and a small key, so you can do either one of these 2, and you have exactly 1 item left to find, then you want to drop down and grab the big chest first. Now, the very last thing I'm going to say about this situation is if you find yourself here, you drop down to the big chest, and you open the big chest, and it doesn't have your item, then your item has a 50% chance of being an Iced Tea and a 50% chance of being on Cold Stare. And of course, if you want to guarantee that you find the item, you're going to need to go to Iced Tea first. But if you're okay with potentially leaving your item behind, then you can decide to play the odds and just go to Cold Stare straight away. And 50% of the time, Cold Stare is going to have your item anyways, and then you just saved around 52.5 seconds. So that is a significant time save. Now, of course, it is a risk, so you're going to have to think about whether you want to take that gamble. I will say 52 seconds is a lot of time. It is not quite as much time as it takes to check, for example, Hera Basement check, or even the Eastern Palace Vanilla Big Key chest. But some people will skip Hera Basement every time, even if it guaranteed has an item. So just be thinking about these odds and these timings as you're making this decision. Now, the one thing about this is it's not like Eastern Palace, where if you took the 50-50 and your item wasn't on Armos, you can just go back in. If you skip Iced Tea, you're basically just never going back there until you're last locating it, because it takes a full minute and a half to get back to Iced Tea from the entrance of the dungeon, and that's with Samaria. And if you're in this situation, you probably don't have Samaria anyways, so it's going to take even longer, probably a little bit over 2 minutes. So you're really just going to last location Iced Tea if you leave it behind. So be prepared to take that risk if you are committing to this. Alright, that is going to do it for the main routing portion of this video, but before we do a recap, I did want to insert an appendix where I want to go over the different possible magic backups that you can use in case you are coming into Ice Palace and planning on doing the Icebreaker route. And remember, we talked about how when we're doing the Icebreaker route, we have this magic concern if we come in without any magic backups. And usually when that happens, our plan A is going to be to grab the magic refills in this room. We will need at least 2 of those 3. And as you can see, having to do that not only changes our routing because we need the small key there, but it also costs you a little bit over 10 seconds. So when possible, you are going to want to avoid that. Now, of course, the easiest way to avoid that is just by having half magic. So if you have half magic equipped and you come in here with at least a little bit more than half bar of magic, then you should be okay to have enough magic for Cold Stare, even if you're using the Fire Rod. The other easiest way to get past this problem is by just having a green potion or a blue potion in your inventory, and then you can drink that at some point and refill your magic, and you'll be good to go. Another simple and common way of having a magic backup is to have the Bombus Medallion. So here on the left, I'm using the Fire Rod, and on the right, I'm using the Bombus Medallion, which is obviously going to use less magic than 8 Fire Rod shots. Now, as you can see, because the spell animation for Bombus is so long, the fight is going to take longer, even if you execute it well, and you'll see that it takes around maybe 5 or so seconds longer when executed properly. Of course, this is still less than the extra 10 seconds or even more that it might take you to get the extra refills in the dungeon, so this is still better than that. One other magic backup strat that's really good to know is called Fire Rod duping. So when you shoot the Fire Rod at Cold Stare's shell, then it kind of burns and leaves this kind of lingering flame. Well, it turns out if certain other projectiles hit Cold Stare's shell while this Fire Rod shot is burning, they will also do Fire Rod damage. And most commonly, you see this used with sword beams. So if you have full health, you can shoot sword beams, and if you shoot a sword beam immediately after a Fire Rod shot, you'll see that the sword beam also does damage to Cold Stare's shell. And this is really nice because it allows you to kill Cold Stare's shell in as few as 4 Fire Rod shots, so that saves a lot of magic. Now, for doing this, you are going to need full health, so you're going to need to be careful not to come in here with less than full health, or if you have a red potion, that can also work. It doesn't matter where you stand, you can do it from the bottom, or you can do it from right in front of Cold Stare. Both timings will work here. But you'll want to get a feel for when you can slash your sword. Obviously, if you try it too soon, then your sword slash won't come out, and if you do it way too late, then the Fire Rod shot won't be burning anymore, so it won't work. So try to practice this a little bit, but it's not that hard, and the great thing about this is that it is almost just as fast as 8 Fire Rod shots. It's only slightly slower, so you won't really lose that much time. Now, you can also perform this Fire Rod dupe technique with the bow and arrows. This one's going to be a lot trickier. So you'll find that if you just try to shoot the Fire Rod and then shoot an arrow, it's going to be way too slow. The arrow's going to hit way too late. So this one is going to work a little bit differently. You're going to want to make sure that you are at the very bottom of the room and facing upward, and you're actually going to shoot the arrow first. Then you're immediately going to menu to the Fire Rod, and now when you menu back out, you're going to need to shoot the Fire Rod as soon as you can, and the timing is quite tight on this. I missed it. Alright, let's try again. And if you do it right, then the Fire Rod shot should actually hit before the bow, the arrow, and you'll get a double hit. Now, this can be tricky to practice because sometimes, even though it sounds like you got a double hit, it only counts as 1 instance of damage, because if there's not enough space between the 2 hits, it'll only count once. So if you're practicing this, I would recommend getting the practice hack and displaying the enemy HP over here. That way you can tell, for example, I'm gonna not be on top of the timing, so even if I'm a little bit late, you'll see that the HP only went down by 1 increment, which meant that even though I heard 2 sounds of Cold Stare getting hit, it actually only counted once. Now let's try to get a really good one so that I can show you what it's like when it's actually done properly. So I'm going to be at the very bottom, shoot the bow. I'm even going to buffer an up movement as I'm getting ready to shoot my Fire Rod shot. And that was a proper double hit. So you saw that the enemy HP value went down twice. Let's see if we can actually get another one of those. Might be pushing my luck here, but let's see if I'll do my best. Alright, so that was another double hit, and now Cold Stare has gone on to the second phase. So be sure to practice this one before you try to use it in a run. As I said, the timing is quite tight. Now, the other projectile that works for this is actually the explosion bullets from the Cane of Samaria block. So you're going to lay the block first in front of Cold Stare, you're going to shoot a Fire Rod shot, and then you're going to time exploding the block so that it hits Cold Stare after the Fire Rod does, kind of like that. Then you can lay another one, and then repeat the same process. Okay, just like that. And if ideally, you should be able to get these double hits every time, and the Cane Samaria does use less magic than the Fire Rod, so this should end up saving you some magic overall. Of course, with Samaria and bow and arrow strats, all of this menuing does cost you a lot of time, and if you miss it, it's even worse. So if you have the choice, it's probably going to be more worth it to collect the extra magic refills in the dungeon. The sword beam strat obviously is a lot faster, but for the bow and Samaria, that's probably going to only be used for emergencies. And one other way you can handle the magic situation is to be aware of your enemy prize pack shuffling in your seed. So this is just the ALTTP wiki page on enemy prize packs. So this shows the vanilla distribution of prize packs to enemy groupings. So see, for example, this group of 4 enemies, including the Pengators and the Gyptos, has this prize pack, which has a full magic refill every 4 drops. But of course, in the seed that you're playing, it's randomized, so this group of 4 enemies could instead be assigned to the bomb pack, for example, so then they'll only drop bombs, so this can be really good to know. In particular, there are a bunch of Pengators in Ice Palace, so that one can be relevant, and then you'll also want to pay attention to this grouping of enemies, which has both the blue and the red jellies. You'll see that in the vanilla game, this has a small magic refill once every 4 drops. And if you go look at the later screens of Ice Palace, you'll see that there are 3 red jellies in this room. So I'm just going to kill them with a Fire Rod, just because I don't want to have to deal with all the little red jellies. But you see that I got 3 drops there, a bomb, a green rupee, and a heart. And if we go back to our reference, you'll see that it means we are here in the prize pack. So we had a bomb, a green rupee, and a heart. That means the next one is going to be a small magic, and the one after that is going to be a green rupee. And if we continue on in the dungeon here, go down these stairs, and then go past this anti-fairy, in the next room over here, there are 4 blue jellies, so you can check those, and look, there was our small magic right there. And if we kill more of these, we can probably get a green rupee. There it is there. And there's lots of jellies that you can kill here. And if you go to the room right before Gold Stair, there are also 2 red jellies here, over here that you can deal with. And then if that is still not enough, you can also lift up this block, and there's 4 blue jellies underneath here. So plenty of jellies in case that prize pack is useful to you to farm for drops. Again, each enemy has a 50% chance of dropping a prize from that prize pack and advancing the counter. Alright, now we're getting into some more obscure methods of dealing with the magic situation. For this one, I want to shout out Kern's video on this. This is called the Santa Dash. So for this one, you're going to need the magic cape, and you're also going to need the boots. You're going to need to get your magic pretty low, and you're going to need an anti-fairy. Usually the one in this room probably works the best. Now, you're first going to do a cape dash, and it is worth noting that this needs to be a true cape dash where you press both buttons at the same time. It can't be a more relaxed cape dash where you press Y first and then press A, even though that does get you a dash. For whatever reason, this only works if you do a true cape dash. And that is because when you do a true cape dash, you can actually get hit by an anti-fairy while you're dashing. So you're going to do that intentionally, and then the anti-fairy, hopefully, is going to hit you, and then underflow your magic. Let's see if I can actually get this correctly. So like that, and now my magic bar is all glitched out. Now you can either wait for it to resolve, but the safer thing to do is probably to uncape. So my magic is still in a weird underflowed state, and then what I'm going to do is I am going to just pick up one of the 2 pots of magic underneath these skulls, and that will reset my magic back to full. So. And finally, there are some other sort of more black magic techniques that will allow you to refill your magic. This one involves using an Ancilla overload glitch, so that you can spam your Samaria and it won't work, and instead it will actually fill up your magic. So you see my magic bar went up there. For this specific setup, which is not the only one that works, I think, but it's the one I'm going to show here, you're going to try to explode a Samaria block and then lay another one immediately after exploding the first one. I'm going to shoot 3 arrows into a wall. You're going to try to lay 2 bombs. The second one is not going to come out. And then you're going to spam Samaria, and it's going to refill your magic. So don't ask me how that works. It would take another video made by someone else, and I don't want to get into it, but there is some Ancilla overload shenanigans that you can use to refill your magic in case of emergency. And just one final note on magic, all the routing that I have outlined in the rest of this video does assume that you're not going to get hit randomly by any of these anti-fairies, because that drains your magic and screws everything up. So make sure you're not trying to just like dash blindly through this room and getting hit by this anti-fairy, and that goes doubly so for the anti-fairy in this ice room. So you're going to want to practice this room so that you can execute efficiently and either be fast enough that you can just go through the room like this. Because if you delay a little bit too long and you get tripped up, for example, maybe you have trouble hitting the switch, and then you're in this situation where the anti-fairy is just bouncing around in this bottom corner, and then you're going to lose a ton of magic if you're not careful. So definitely you don't want that to happen, especially if you're using the Cadence of Maria route, where you need to have all the magic possible already. So definitely make sure that doesn't happen to you. Alright, finally we've made it to the last section of this video. I'm going to try to give a quick summary of the takeaway points from everything that we learned, and then we're going to try to walk through the dungeon and test your knowledge. Alright, so here's some takeaway points. So if you have Samaria and you're doing Icebreaker, try to come up with some sort of magic backup, whether that be half magic, a green potion, or any of the other methods that I described in the video. If you are doing Icebreaker, you want to hit the switch only if you're in go mode, otherwise leave the switch on orange, with a special note for key sanity that we did cover earlier. Once you get to the second half, the plus-shaped room, you're always going to do the right side first. And then your default, in most cases, you're going to go left to freezer chest. There's only one rare situation where you're going to go north to the falling tile room, and all of these conditions have to be true. You're doing the Ice Palace bomb jump route, you don't have the hook shot, you have a small key to go through that door at the bottom of the long vertical ice hallway, and you know for sure that you're going to open all the chests in the dungeon, including iced tea. So that could be because you haven't found any of the items yet, or because you're playing key sanity. Okay, let's assume that you did go left to freezer chests. Then the next thing you're going to do is, if you have the big key, your default is going to be to check the big chest next. The only situation where you wouldn't is if you're doing the Ice Palace bomb jump route, and you have a small key to get through that door, and you know you're going to open iced tea for sure, which means you have to have at least 2 or more of the items unaccounted for, or you're playing key sanity, because that is going to be the faster full clear. Otherwise, if you didn't drop down and check the big chest next, then you're going to bomb jump over to iced tea if you have a small key. The only time that you don't do this is if you did a Samaria Icebreaker route and you decided that you don't have any magic backups for Cold Stare, and so you have to save that key, in which case you can only do this bomb jump if you have 2 small keys on hand, because that means Cold Stare does not have a small key. Alright, now let's review the decisions in the dungeon. If you have Samaria and you're in go mode, you're going to hit the switch here, and then you're going to come back. Otherwise, if you are not in go mode, then you're just going to go straight right and then do your Icebreaker clip. Except if you're in key sanity and you already have the big key and small key, in which case you don't hit the switch either way. Of course, if you don't have Samaria, then you're just going to go and do your Ice Palace bomb jump. When you get here, either you'll have done Icebreaker, in which case you'll come from the right side, or you'll use a small key on this door if you have one. If you don't have a small key, then you're going to go north through the falling tile room, and then you're going to end up here, and you're going to either use hookshot or bomb jump across to get to the right side. After doing the right side, you're probably going to go left to freezer chest. The only time when you want to go up here is if you don't have the hookshot, you also have a small key, you did the Ice Palace bomb jump route, and you know you're going to full clear the dungeon, which means you're going to clear every chest. If you're doing that, then you're going to dash down through this room, you're going to open iced tea chests, and then after that, you're going to go back the way you came. You're eventually going to end up back here, hit the switch, go through this door, and then you're going to bomb jump across, and check freezer chest, and then check big chest after that. But assuming you did go left originally, and you get to freezer chest, you're going to open freezer chest, and then it's decision point time. So if you already have all 3 items at this point, you're just going to drop down in this hole, and then go in this door, and if the switch is on blue because you did Ice Palace bomb jump or you're in go mode, then you're just going to go straight to Cold Stare. If not, then the switch will be in orange, and then you'll go down this way and get whatever keys you need in order to go through here, and then go through this door, and then get to Cold Stare this way. And of course, if you need to, you'll stop by here for some extra magic in case you needed that extra magic refill. If you don't have all 3 items after opening freezer chest, then you probably have the big key. And whenever you have the big key in this situation, 9 times out of 10, you're going to check the big chest next. The only time when you don't check the big chest, even if though you have the big key, is if you know you're going to open iced tea, you know you're going to have to full clear, and you did the Ice Palace bomb jump route, and you have a small key on hand. In that case, you're going to bomb jump across regardless and go to iced tea first. In all other cases, you're going to check the big chest first. After opening the big chest, you're going to dash right, and you might have to open Iced Tea next. If the pegs are on blue, then you're going to have to push the block down and climb back out of here, which is going to be really slow. If the pegs are on orange, then you're going to get to just dash across, which is a lot faster. As you go into this room, be thinking about whether you're going to need this key from underneath this pot, which depends on whether the switch is on orange, and also whether you need a magic refill. Once you make it to Iced Tea, you're going to come back the way you came by going to the right here, and then eventually you'll make it back to Cold Stare. And of course, sometimes you'll skip Iced Tea altogether, either because you decided that it was not an item because you already deduced it, or because you're taking a 50-50 gamble. If you open freezer chests and you don't have all 3 items, and you also don't have the big key, or you're in the Ice Palace bomb jump full clear scenario that we described earlier, then you're going to bomb jump across here, and then you're going to go do Iced Tea chest first. But there is one exception. If you did the Icebreaker route and you need extra magic refills before Cold Stare, remember that you should only do this if you have 2 small keys on hand, not just 1. You need 2 small keys. Then you're going to go through this door, you're going to use a small key here, and then you're going to make it all the way to Iced Tea. After opening Iced Tea chest, the way back to the big chest is going to depend. If you did Icebreaker, and you have the hookshot, then you can go this way around, and then you're going to hookshot clip to the big chest, and it's going to be the fastest way. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back this way, and then you're going to end up here, where you're going to bomb jump across, and then bomb through to the big chest. And finally, if you did the Icebreaker route, but you need extra magic before Cold Stare, but you don't have the big key, and you also don't have 2 small keys, then you're in kind of a sucky situation. What you do here depends on whether you have the hookshot or not. If you do have the hookshot, then good for you. You can just fall down in this hole, go to the right here, and you'll route to Iced Tea this way, and then you'll pick up the item in Iced Tea, which is going to be the big key, and then you'll go back to the right, make your way back over here, and then hookshot clip to the big chest, and then you will be done. And if you didn't have the hookshot, then this is the case that really sucks, where you're going to have to go back up these stairs, and it's super awkward. You're going to go right here, and then you are going to go back to that falling tile room, grab these 2 small magics, and then fall down. After that, you're going to make your way south, use the key on this door, and then open Iced Tea chest here. Then you're going to go back the way you came, back to this room, and then bomb jump across, and then finally bomb through to finally get your big chest. And that is the worst, or the most awkward case. So hopefully you won't ever have to run into that. And that is how to route Ice Palace. Alright, I know this was a super long video. I want to thank you for watching up until this point. This has been a lot of work to do. I tested a lot of things, not just the ones that you saw in this video, but I tested things such as, you know, if you're doing the Icebreaker route and you need extra magic and you don't have the hookshot, is it better to always hit the switch on the way in and then always go to this room first to grab these 2 small magics? And then since you hit the switch, you can always just push this block and you won't need to use Samaria, so then you'll always have enough magic for Cold Stare. And I tested things like this, and it didn't seem like it was faster. But of course, this is a really complicated dungeon to route, so it is possible that I missed something. If I can think of anything in the future, I will note that as a correction in the comments below. One last note, I did do all these timings assuming you can execute these rooms fairly quickly. You know, your experience may be a little bit different. For example, if you really suck at doing these ice rooms, it might change your route preferences just a little bit. But honestly, if that is the case, I would just recommend opening this up in the practice hack and grinding these rooms just a little bit, because it will help you overall in the long run. Alright, thanks again for watching this video. Hopefully you learned something or took away something. I know it was a really long one. I've really been wanting to make this video on Ice Palace for a long time because I had a lot of questions about routing this myself. So hopefully I can see less people do this falling tile room drop down when you're not supposed to. Hopefully this helps you in your next run, and best of luck to you in the future.